Hi everyone, welcome to our channel. So today video is on Angular 14 implementing a CRUD example sample using the Angular Material UI library. So here is a small definition about Angular. Okay, Angular is a framework that can be used to build single page applications. Okay, that means on every page request Angular won't send request to the server. It's going to render the content based on the route dynamically. Okay. And Angular applications are built in with components that make our code simple and clean. So to separate and to maintain a clean code, Angular composes of components. Component is nothing but a small piece of code. Okay. We can separate like that. So here is a small diagrammatic representation of the Angular component. In general, Angular component consists of three files. One is component TypeScript file where we will write our TypeScript logic. Another one is HTML TypeScript HTML file where we are going to add our HTML content. Another one is CSS. All these three files combinedly makes Angular component. Okay. So here data flow will be two-way. Means from HTML we can pass the content to the TS file, TypeScript file. From TypeScript to HTML file also we can push. So it is a bidirectional and it supports events like button click events, mouse over, like every normal JavaScript events it will support. So for every event, we should have a method registered in our TS file to execute our custom logic. Okay, so that's all about the Angular. Now let's create a sample example. And for this demo, I am going to use the Angular Material UI components. So to create the Angular application, we should have Angular CLI in our local machine. So search like Angular CLI command and go to the link, and here is the command for installing the Angular CLI in our local machine. So here is -g that represents globally. So you need just open a command prompt. It doesn't require any specific folder path. Just open command prompt and paste this command and run it. Once that is run it, once that is successfully installed, we are good to create our Angular application. Okay. And after installing the CLI, the command for creating our Angular application is ng space new and name of your project. Okay. And next, after project is successfully created, we should go to the project path, and to run the application, this is the command. Okay. So in this page, you can find all the required commands to start the Angular application. Okay. Now let me create the Angular application. So here is the command for creating the Angular application. We know the command ng space new space name of your project. So let's run the command. And here CLI asking whether we want to include Angular routing or not. Say yes, we are going to include the routing. So enter Y, that means yes. Okay. Next, it will ask for what kind of style sheet we want, whether CSS or SCSS or SAS or less. I will choose normal CSS. Our project got created successfully. Let's go to the project root folder. So cd space and 14. Okay, now I am in the root folder of the project. Now let's open our project in the Visual Studio code editor. For that, command is like code space dot. It automatically opens our project in the Visual Studio code editor. So here is our Angular application. And if you go to package.json, here you can see Angular file versions, which is 14 latest version. Okay. Now let's explore the file structures, existing files of this application. Okay. So package.json, let's start with package.json. So package.json contains commands like building the project, running the project, and also it will contain the references of the third-party libraries that support for the development of the application. Okay. And next file is Angular JSON. This contains all setup and application running configurations. Okay. And next, inside of the SRC, we have index.html file. So this is the only real HTML file in the Angular application. So whenever user requests our application, this is the HTML file gets downloaded. Okay. So here you can see app.route, which is the root element. All our Angular component contents gets rendered inside of this root element, app-root. Okay. And we have main.ts file. So this is the entry file for our Angular application, for starting the Angular application. Okay. And we have default entry files like in the app folder, app module, which is the root module. Okay. So module is nothing but some group of code. We can name it as module. So like this, we can have n number of modules in the Angular application based on our business. But app module is our root of all modules. Okay. And we have app routing module where we can configure the routing. Okay. And we have default uh, initial component. You can see I mentioned, right, component consists of three files: css, tss, and html file. So app component.ts, app html.ts, app component.css. So this is the my entry component. Okay, so that's all about the default files in our Angular application. Now I want to install the Angular material, which is a UI component library, okay, where we can easily integrate the rich UI components like cards, menu, toolbar, table. Every component is auto available in the material library. Okay, let's try to install it. So search like Angular material and click on the top link. Okay, and go to get started. Okay, and here you can see a command ng add at the rate and angular slash material. So let's copy this command. So before installing the Angular material, first let's run our application and see what is the default output and structure. Okay, to run our Angular application, command is ng serve. So this command will start a local server where we can run our Angular application. So it runs under localhost 4200. Okay, my application is running successfully, and here you can see this is the local port our application is running. Copy that URL and try to access this. So here is our Angular application. This is the default HTML that comes when we create our application. Okay, now let's install the Angular material. So we are going to remove all the static content. Okay, so copy this command. Now let me run the application in one tab and open one more terminal. Okay, so in this terminal, let's try to install the Angular material command. So paste the command, install it. So it is asking package is installed and further installation. Would you like to proceed? Yes. Let's enter Y to continue. And it provides default themes like indigo, pink, deep purple, pink, blue, gray are the custom. So we have to choose one of it. I am going to choose the first one, indigo slash pink. Okay. And it is asking for global Angular material typography style. Yes, we can say yes for it. And it is asking for to whether to include or exclude the default animations available with the Angular component. So I would like to say yes, I will select the first option, and installation is successful, and you can see some of the relevant dependencies are up that are related to Angular material updated into these files. Okay, now what I can do now, let's remove the HTML, static HTML we have, right? This HTML, let's remove this HTML. So this HTML is in the our default component app component.html. So let's remove all this HTML. Up to here, remove it. But router outlet, which is a default Angular component. So this component is for when you have page level components, till now we haven't configured any routes, right? So route level component content will render inside of this element. Okay, for now leave it like this and save and check our application. Okay, we have completely removed the static HTML. Now first thing I want to do, I want to add a nice menu bar, which is the uh, from the Angular material. Okay, so go to Angular material website and click on the components. So these are all the available components. Okay, very easily integrate with nice documentation here. Okay, so we want to integrate the menu, right? For that we have to go for the toolbar section. So click on the toolbar section. Okay, and here you can see few examples. So these are the menus. Okay, so now the thing is I want to configure this menu, this simple menu. Okay, for that let me copy the HTML content, material HTML content. So this is the HTML content for the menu. Okay, so I want third menu, right? So this is the third menu. This is the third menu. Okay, inside of the p tag, let me copy this mat toolbar element. Okay, copy and add it here in the app component. Here we are. I want to remove some unwanted code. I don't want any button. Want all these things. Simple span tag where I can give a name to my application. So this is about I'm going to create a simple CRUD on students information. So I will name it like students. Okay, that is my menu heading. And here we can see the red line, that is due to we have to import the this component module in the app component. So to import it, can go here and go to the API section. Here is the import. So copy this import, okay, and go to app module, okay, add it here. Now we have to import into our imports array. Okay, let me add it to my imports array, save it. And now we can see that red line is gone. Okay, now, okay, before checking, after installing, we haven't restarted our server, right? So please restart the server, or else you won't see the Angular material changes appearing on your website. Okay, so after installing material, please ensure to rerun your application one more time. Now let's go to our website. So here is the website and we can see a nice blue color menu added. Okay, so we have already used one of the Angular material component, that is toolbar component, to add as a menu. Now let's try to integrate a API to complete our demo. So we need a API, right, to bind the data to implement CRUD operation like create, read, update, delete operation. We need a API, right? So for that, I am going to set up a fake API, that is the JSON server API. You can search like JSON server. Okay, you can go for npm. Okay, and first thing is, first here is the command to install JSON server globally onto your local machine. Okay, just like Angular CLI, how we install globally, this JSON server also we have to install globally. For that, you can open command prompt from anywhere in your system and run this command. So after installing this command, set up the JSON server. Okay, run the JSON server. So for that, you can create a folder, and inside of that folder, you can run this command json-server watch.db.json file. Okay, but for my demo, what I will do, I am going to integrate this JSON server also inside of my Angular application. Okay, so let me add it as a one of the command in my package.json so that I can run easily. Okay, so go to package.json. In the script section, let me add new command like json run, and the command is okay. So what is this command means? run the JSON server and in the watch mode. Why in the watch mode means here we are uh, trying to use a db.json file. So what is this db.json file means? It is normal JSON file where we can add our dummy data. Okay, once this server is running, this server will fetches the data from the simple JSON file, but its look and feel looks like actual API only. Okay, so now let's run JSON server. Okay, for that let's open terminal. Okay, and open one more terminal. So command is like npm space run space the name of the script command json-run. Okay, it started running, and here you can see few endpoints. Okay, how these endpoints are framed means whenever we first time run this command, here you can see a log creating db.json with some default data that represents here also you can see oops db.json doesn't exist, so creating the db.json. Whenever you are creating running this command first time, it will check for db.json file. If it exists, it's going to use the data inside of the JSON file and create the endpoints like this. Okay, if it doesn't contains any JSON file, it will create a new JSON file with some dummy data. Okay, and it will create a route based on it. Okay, if I go to if I search like db.json file, here is the db.json file we got. Okay, and here is the some sample data it's contains. And you are seeing three type of endpoints, right? So the root property, okay, is taken as a endpoints like post, comments is one endpoint, okay, and profile is one endpoint. Okay, like this default root properties will be taken as one point. So like this, using this JSON server, you can set up a number of uh, endpoints. Okay, but I'm going to remove all these things. I'm going to create my own data. So that is like students. So now my endpoint will be students. Okay, root property, and it will be a array, and this array, let me add sample data I have already prepared. Okay, okay, this is my sample students data like ID, first name, last name, gender. So all this data will return as a API response from my JSON server. So if I check my logs, I can see there will be a new endpoint. See, new endpoint slash students, and this JSON server runs at port number 3000. Okay, if I copy this command and access it to our browser, see, I am getting the API response. Okay, like this, I can implement all CRUD operation like read, fetch, delete. So you can see here, it will show you all the supported routes. Okay, post, put, delete, everything it will support. Okay, everything it will be supported. See, getting specific ID. So if I give some ID value slash I one first record I want, see, if I want second record, filtering by some ID also it supports. Okay, so that's all about the local JSON server. Okay, next we are trying to focus on read operation like fetching the data from this JSON server API in our Angular application. On successfully receiving the response, that response we are going to bind it to our using Angular material table. Okay, so today our main focus is on to implement the read operation, and for binding the data we are going to use the Angular material table. Okay, so first, before invoking the get API call in our Angular application, we need to create few more things. Okay, the first thing, I'm going to create a new component. Okay, so in this new Angular component, I am going to add my logic for invoking the get API call and render it to the Angular material table. Okay, so my new component I want to create is like uh, all students. Okay, so go to terminal. So instead of creating manually component like one TS file, one HTML file, and one CSS file, instead of doing that, I can use the benefit of CLI, .NET sorry, Angular CLI. So Angular CLI will use us the templated components. Okay. So the command for creating my new component is ng generate, and I want to create component, right? So component and the name of the component. I will name it like all students. Okay. And I don't want to create any test files. So I can add a flag like skip text. Okay. From the command. And here is, you can see I got created the component file, all student component files like TS file, CSS file, and HTML file. And automatically that component is imported to the app module. You can see the update. And if I check my project structure, okay, if I go to inside of the app folder, you can see my new component folder. Okay. So now first thing is I want to configure a route for this component. For that, we know we can go to app routing module. Okay. So in this array here you can see, right, routes with empty array. So in this array we can configure route for my components. Okay. So open the object and properties like path. So path is nothing but URL for that URL your component will be loaded. So I want to make my all student component as a home component. So home component means you can leave empty path and you have to map the component. So for that you can use the component property. So for this route this component will be loaded. Okay, that is the logic. And component will be all students component and import it. It will automatically imports. Okay. So if I go to all components.html, I have some content, right? So if I go to my website, this content need to be rendered. Okay. So let's go to the website. See, this content is rendering. That means route is loading the appropriate component. Okay. Now the next thing is I have to create a service file, Angular service file. So in Angular, these service files are used for invoking the API calls. Okay, means in this file we are going to write our logic for invoking the API call. So for my demo, let me create a service file like student service file. Okay, so for this also we have a command to generate the file automatically. So ng generate. So I want service file, right? So it is service and name of the file. I'm going to name it like students. And I don't want any text files, hyphen skip hyphen tests. Okay. And here you can see my CS file is students.service TS file is created. So if I check inside of the app folder, I can see my student.service file. Okay. So this is the service file, and here you can see service file is decorated with the injectable. That means this class can be injected into any component. Okay, at the rate injectable means it can be injectable file. Okay, and first thing is here into this constructor I want to inject a service like a HTTP client service. So first let me import the HTTP port from @angular /common/http. From this I want a service like HTTP client. Okay, so this service, on injecting this service into our student service constructor, we will get a default methods where we can invoke the API call. Okay, so let me inject private HTTP, sorry, variable name. I will name it like HTTP client and its type is HTTP client. Okay, since we are importing the HTTP client service, right, we have to register the HTTP client module in our app module. Okay, so go to app module and import the HTTP client module. Okay, so that loads from the Angular common HTTP. So it must be imported in our module level. Okay, so that is the initial step for our service. Next, I want to create a response model. If you recall, here is our API, right? I want to create a model, nothing but some interface that represent the properties of this class. Okay, so let's create a one interface or a model for my API response. So for to generate a interface, I can use command like ng generate interface and name of the interface. I will name it like student. For interface, uh, CLI won't give any test file, so I no need to add the flag like skip test. Okay, so just run this command, and here you can see my file got created. Okay, if I search like student here, this is my interface. So I want to create as it is like this, right? So let's copy the response. These properties I want to add here. Okay, and format them. So ID will be number, first name will be string, last name will be string. Okay, string and number. So finally my response type interface looks like this. Okay, now we can implement our main logic for uh, read operation. Okay, I have already some sample data, right? Let me do first read operations in the CRUD. Create, read, update, delete. I am choosing to do first read operation. Okay, for that, first I want to implement a logic in my service file for invoking the API call. Okay, so let me create a method like get. Okay, so that get and it returns an observable of observable that loads from the RxJS. Okay, and I will get students array of data, right, for my get API. So this is the API I'm consuming. So I'm expecting returning array of API. So here what I will do return. I'm going to use the HTTP client instance. I have already mentioned it will have default method, right? Since we are invoking get request right now, so it will have a method like get. Okay, and here I can specify the response type like student array. And here I have to pass the URL. What is my URL? Localhost 3000/student. So copy this endpoint and paste it. That's it, our API invocation logic. Now I have to render this response data into my all components by adding a material table in my all students component. So first go to all student HTML. Okay, here let me add a div, and inside of this div I want to add the material table. Okay, so to add that, go to Angular material page and components and look for the table. So here is the table, and here you can see sample example. Okay, so this is the nice uh, Angular material table. So I'm going to use this. So click on this view code. Okay, and I'm going to copy this table. Okay, I will explain slowly what is what. Okay, add it here. Okay, and let me remove the default comments. Those are not relevant to us. Okay, okay, this is my table. Since I am using material table, right, I must import the material module, sorry, mat table module. If you recall, when we added our toolbar component, we have imported mat toolbar module, right? Same way we have to import the material table module. So for that, you scroll up, you can see the API tab. Okay, here you can see the import. Copy that import. go to app module. Okay, add it here and add it inside of the imports array. Okay, we are done with that one. And first thing, here you can see some data source is there, right? So this is the default property of the material table. So what this data, if you see square brackets in Angular, that means some dynamic value it expecting. So this data source expecting array of data. It might be anything, but it is expecting the array of data. Okay, and this is a variable that must be contained in our all component TS file. But till now we don't have that variable. That is why it's showing error. Okay, so what it means, the API response we get array, right? That array must be passed to this data source. Okay, so for that, let me create a variable here, all students source. I will name it like all student source, and its type is student array. I am expecting results, right? And initially empty array. Now what I will do, I am assigning this variable to my data source property of the material table. You can see normal table decorated with the mat hyphen table means this is the material table. Okay, so that is good. And here you can see each ng container column definition. It represents one column. Okay, each one column. Each ng container here represents one column. And here column mat column definitions it is showing, right? So this is the column name, which is the unique name. Okay, and this name must be matched with the column array we are going to define initially. If you see here, displayed columns, it will be an array of string, nothing but our column names. These unique names must be first stored into this variable component variable array. Okay, if I will show you an example, you can understand. So go to overview. If you expand this and if you go to TS file, and here you can see display columns, right? And it is array. So whatever columns we want to display, first we have to register them individually. These are like unique names. Okay, any name you can give. These are like unique names. So these names must be given as a column definition names. Okay. For suppose if you given some XYZ here, where in this registration, and if that XYZ not added as a one of the column name, then we get error. For suppose here you given some XYZ and that XYZ not existing in this array, then we will get error because the names whatever registered must be given as a column attribute. Here you can see the mat column definition. Pass it as the name. Okay. So for my demo, let me first define my column names in my all components. Okay. So string array. I'm going to pass my column name. So I will copy those names from my student model. You can give any name, but I'm going to give the property names. Okay. ID, first name, last name, gender. So I want to display all these columns. I am registered into the display column, and it will be registered with in HTML here, mat header row. Okay, like this here in the two places means these are the header related mapping and these are the row related mapping. Okay, like this here we have to register. Okay, now we have registered our array of displayed columns, right? These must be given to the match cell definition. So here there is a match cell definition, right? Here we have to give an ID. Okay, first name, okay, last name, gender, and we need one more container, so duplicate it, and here I can assign age. Okay, I have mapped my mat column definitions. Okay, and next thing is, here is the table header. Here you can give any name, like my means nothing but our table headings. Okay, name, this will be my first name. You can give direct strings here. Okay, last name, and gender, and this will be my age. Okay, and next thing you can see cell. TD means table data, right? So here mat cell. Here you can see mat cell definition reading an element variable. So this element variable automatically reads from the this data source, means it will loop internally this data source. On looping, every record will be a element. So element dot property, nothing but each object will be pops out and that will be read as a element. So element dot or response property names we have to bind here. So our response property name is right, id. So element dot id. This is actual data I am looping and accessing through element variable. So when you use for loop, we will have a variable, right? Same variable like this in the data source. Okay. And next thing, first name, last name, age. Okay. And save everything. So those are the major changes in my mat table. And if I go to all components, now I have to read the invoke the API call. So I will create a get method. So in this method, I have to invoke my API call in my service. So first inject the service. So private student service, okay. So this dot student service dot get dot subscribe. So on receiving the response data, I want to assign it back to my all data, all students data source. So this dot all student data source equal to data. So this data is nothing but the array of our students. Okay. And on component renders, this method gets invoked. So here ng on init is a Angular lifecycle method. Here you can see it's implement and on init. When we implement on init, we have to implement this method. Okay. So this is a lifecycle method. On component rendering, this method gets executed one time. So I'm going to call my get method inside of this method. Okay. So if I check my website, I must able to see the content, okay, in my material table. Okay, if I go here, see, I am getting data. And if I inspect element and network call, if I reload again, see, my API call is invoking and my response is coming and that response is rendering here. But here styling is bit awkward, right? So Angular only provides normal component. So some additional stylings we have to do manually. So here what I will do, in all components, sorry, all student component CSS, let me add a table width like 80%. Okay. Now if I check, now it is little better, right? table is expanded. But I want to center this table. So what I will do? So for centering, I will add a global flex CSS styles. Okay. For that, I am going to add the CSS in styles.css. So this is the root folder, not inside of the app. So if you observe per component, it is not a component CSS file. It is a global CSS file. Okay. So here I will create a class like container. So I can use wherever I want this container. Okay. So display type will be flex and align items center and justify content center. Okay. So save it and let me add this container to my all student component HTML, and to this div let me add the class. If I reload my page, see, now I am getting some space on both right and left hand side. Now I want little bit top padding. Okay, so for that what I will do, I will implement that at my component level. So for that I will go for all component.css, and here I will name a class like all students container. Okay, this is specific to my all student components. Okay, and some padding 20 pixels. Okay, and let me add this class to my div. It's not coming. Padding or all student container. Okay, so now I am getting little padding from menu and the table. Okay, so we are able to render our data. So we are done with our read operation. But here I want to explain few things about the Angular material table. I have mentioned, right? This display columns plays major role. Okay, for displaying whatever order here we are given, that order only content will be rendered. That means, for suppose if I cut this ID here, okay, and if I add ID here at the end, now this column comes at the last. If I check in the output, see, ID is now in the last. For suppose if I here we have age, right? If age column defined in the HTML and not added here, okay, then see, age is not at all displaying. Okay, so sort order, sorry, rendering order and displaying of columns depend upon the column names. These column names what we specified in this array. Okay, so let me revert the changes. I want ID to be first. If I change and check, now ID is coming. Okay, so that's all about the Angular material. Okay, and there are lot of examples you can choose here. Okay, like how to implement pagination, sorting, everything, and expanding the row, everything will be, if you want, you can check the example. So that's all about read operation. Next, we are going to focus on create operation. Our main goal is to implement the create operation. Okay. So for that, let's create a new Angular component like add student. Okay. Let me open the terminal. Okay. Command is like ng generate component, right? We want to create component and name of the component. Add student. And I don't want any test files. So skip test. And component got created. We can check in the folders. So here is our new component. Now let's configure route for it in the app routing module. Okay. So here let's define new object and path. I will specify path like add student. Okay. This is my path. And component I want to map with add student component. Now in our student service file, let's implement our post API because create means post, right? HTTP post request we have to invoke for create the new item. So let's implement it. So go to student service. Here let me create a new method like create and observable. It can check for newly created record. Okay. Return this dot HTTP client dot post. So this post method automatically invokes the HTTP post request. Okay. And it's going to return single student, and we are going to use same URL. If you have any doubts how to frame the URL, you can check the uh, JSON server documentation. Okay, so I simply copy this URL and add it here. And post means payload should be passed, right? So that means this method should contain the payload as an input parameter of type student. Okay, and this payload must be passed as a second parameter here. Okay, so that is our create method. Now let's go to our add component.html and try to frame the form. Okay, so let me create a view and add class like container. Okay, now let's try to add the React material form fields, Angular React material form fields. Okay, so in the material website, go to components and look for forms. Okay, so here you can see the form field and go to one of the example. So these are all the different styles of input fields. Okay, so here I am going to take this outlined way of text box. Okay, so let's view this code. Okay, and let me copy this mat form field. Okay, so let me add it here. So this is the mat form field. From here I want mat label and input normal input element, and that register with the mat input. Okay, and I don't want any icon inside of the text box. I remove it, and I don't want any hint also. Okay, so here I am using mat form field, right? So we have to import the mat form field module into our app component. So if I go to API tab, here is the module we have to import. So copy this app module and import the mat form field. So here we imported the mat form field, but here we need to import one more material module, that is mat input. Here using the mat input attribute, right? So to use it, we have to import the input related module. So for that you have to search like put field, I think. Yes, and in the API copy this, and in our app module let's import this as well. Okay, so what is that? Mat input module. Mat input module. Okay, so this is one form field, right? Now let's remove the placeholder. Okay, and remove the name label also. And what are the fields I required? First name, last name, gender, and the age. Okay, so copy this two times. Okay, and here I can specify like label like first name. Okay, last name and age I want to be a number, so type equal to text. Okay, now I want to add a drop down for the gender. Okay, for that I can go here and check for select. Okay, so go for here. Let's select one of the example. Okay, yeah. Let me select this mat select element. Okay, but I want this kind of effect, so I copy this mat form field and wrap it around it. Okay, so now let's remove this form control and error matcher. Okay, and remove the mat options as well. And I want the label, so add a label inside of this and mention like gender. Since it is a another component, we have to import its namespace. So go to API and copy the mat select module import and go to our app module. Okay, import here and import into our array. Okay, now let's change the values like male, 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 female. Okay, those are the mat options. And if I check my website, okay, this is our home page, but I want to check the output in my add students. So for that, let's search with the route. Okay, we are seeing our add student, but instead of searching in the URL, I would like to add a button on the top of the table. So on clicking on that button, I will add a functionality to navigate from our home page to add student form. Okay, so for that, in all components, sorry, in all students component HTML, let's add a button here. Okay, so let's get the button from our material website. Go and look for a button. So here is the button, and here there are several examples. So instead of a button, I can choose for a link, because link means directly anchor tag, directly I can navigate. Okay, instead of writing a click event and its method, I will choose to write a link. So I'm going to use this link button, but with primary color. Okay, so just copy this anchor tag. Okay, and add it here and remove the href, but I want color to be primary. So what I will do, I will copy the color, okay, and add it as an attribute. Now I can use Angular router link, okay, and I can specify the path, add student. Okay, if I check, okay, here link we are seeing, but there is no button effect. That is because we haven't imported the button module. Okay, let me import the button module. So go to app module, import the button and import it into the imports array, and now check. Now here you can see nice button, but I want it to display at the center. So what I will do, I will wrap it around a div. So all students will create a div, okay, and move our button inside of this div. Okay, now copy these classes and add it here. Okay, if I check, now it's little better, right? And let's change the label to add student. Okay. Okay, now if I click on this add student, I have to navigate to my add student form. See, I'm successfully navigating to the my add student form. But here form is not aligned perfectly, right? So let's try to align it. Okay. So now the form elements are coming side by side, right? So now what I will do, so go to add student component and first all these content, let's move inside of one more div. Okay. Let's move each form field inside of a div, separate div, so that they can be come one by one linely. Okay. Okay. Now if I check, now fields are coming one after one another in a line. Okay. In add component.css file, I will create a class like form element. Okay. And I will give width to some 500 pixels. Okay. So let me add this class to every form control. Okay. So class, let's check first. Yes, my text box is resized. Now let's add same class field to my all form fields. Okay. Now if I check the form, now somewhat better. Let me give some padding here between the form and the menu. For that, go to add student component.cs. Here let me add one more style class. Okay. Like add student container, and I will give some padding 20 pixels. Okay. Now let's add this class to my top level div. Okay. We got some padding. Now here let me add some form heading with h3 tag. Okay. And I will name it like add a new student. Okay. And let give some style like text align center. Okay. And now here at the bottom, I need to add a button, right? So let's go to our material website. Okay. And let me take this button. Okay. So let's click here to view the code and copy this button. Okay. Add it here and name it like add button. I want this button type should be a button. Okay. Now if I check the output, okay, now our form looks like this. Now what I will do, I'm going to add a material card as a background to this form to give nice box effect. So for that, let's go to card component. Okay. First, let's import the namespace. Okay. Copy this and go to our app module. Okay. Let's import the card here and import the mat card module into our imports. Let's copy the card element. Okay. So this is the element. So go to our add student component.html. Okay. Inside of this div, add it. And now cut our all form field code. Okay. And move it inside of the material card. Now save it. And if I check the output, Now our form little better, right? Nice box effect. That is because of the Angular code we are using. Okay. Now let's enable the form model binding with our Angular component. Okay. So let's go to our add student component.ts file. Okay, and let's declare a form variable like student form. Okay, this is of for type student. So let's assign initial values. So initially for a new record, ID will be 0. Okay, age will be empty, and here age should be a number. Okay, first name will be empty, and last name will be empty, and the gender by default I will give male. Okay, now I am going to map this form model with the or HTML form. For that, I can use ng model, which is a template binding. Okay. So on the input field, I can write like open square brackets and inside of it circular brackets and specify like ng model. To this model, we have to see. I am assigning for the input field. Okay. So to this model, I can give my form variable. So student form dot this is for first name, right? As in it. Okay. Like that, all form fields must be registered with their individual form property. Here this should be last name. Okay. And here this should be age. Sorry, age. Okay. And here we have to bind it for match select element. Okay. There is input, no input field here. So here and specify like gender. Okay, here we are getting some red line error, right? That is because we have to import the form module into our app module because we are using ng model, right? So go to app module and import the form module here. So form module, okay, forms module, and that loads from the Angular forms. Now if we go to our add student component.html, that red line error is gone. Okay, now save everything and check the output. See, now here we are getting some default data, empty fields, and here 0. And here you can see mail automatically binded. Okay, that is because we have given default value as mail in our TS file. Okay, so now here for this button, I have to register a click event, and to that event we have to register method in our add component.ts file. So here what I will do here, I will create a method in our add student component.ts. Okay. So let's inject our service. So private student service. So student service. Okay. This dot student service dot create. So to this create method, I can directly input my student form variable as a input payload. Okay. So then subscribe. So now on successfully saved the data, I want to navigate back to my home page. So for that, I have to inject one router service like, okay, router. Okay, that loads from the React Angular router library. Okay, now using that router, this dot router dot navigate and open square brackets inside of specify the path. My home page, right? Simply slash is enough. Okay. And now we have to register this create method into our button click event. So for registering the click event, you have to open the circular braces and mention the name of the event like click and register the method. So that's it. I think we are good to create a new item. Okay, let's check. So let's come back to our home page again. Okay, now click on the add student. Now open inspect elements. Okay, now let me add a new record. Okay, okay, and mail. I'm clicking the add button. See, immediately I navigate to back to my home page, and here you can see the new record. If I go to my network calls, okay, the first record will be, see here, post request, creating for the new record. And here is the payload I am sending, and you can see the response, and with ID equal to 3, this is auto generated by server. That means the record is successfully created. Okay, so that's all about create operation in Angular 14 using material UI library. Okay, next we are going to focus on update operation. Our main focus is to implement the update operation. Okay, so let's create a new Angular component for update operation like edit student component. Okay, okay. Now the command is like ng generate component, and my name of component name is edit hyphen student. Okay, and I don't want any test file, so flag is like skip test. Okay, sorry, tests. So our component got created. Now let's register a route for it in our app routing module. So go to app routing module. Here let me create a path like edit student. And here I want to add a dynamic placeholder in my route like colon ID. The colon prefixed with any thing is called dynamic placeholder. Means here any value can be added. Okay, so in general we are expecting a ID value, the record item that we want to edit, right? So that ID value I want to add it in the route. Okay, now component must be mapped to edit student component. Okay, now let's implement our logic for invoking the API calls in our student service. Go to student service. Okay, here we have to implement two API calls. Why two API call means one is get and one is put method. Okay, so HTTP put is for updating. Why another get means this get is like get by ID value, because to edit a form, so to edit a item, our form should be populated with the data, right? So that data I want to fetch from this get by ID endpoint. Okay, so first let me create an endpoint like get by ID, and it will have input parameter like ID. Okay, and return this dot http client dot get, and it will return the student, single student. Okay, and it's observable of student, its return type. Okay, now I have to frame a dynamic URL, because if you go to JSON server documentation, here you can see specific record. To get the specific record, this is the get request. Means in the URL we have to add our ID value. Okay, that means I have to frame the URL dynamically. So for that, add backticks and copy this URL. Okay, now to add ID value dynamically, I can use a dollar and flower brackets. So inside of the flower brackets, we can pass the dynamic value. Okay, so this is going to return the item data that we want to edit. Okay, now let's create one more method, that is for update. Okay, so update, here we will have a payload just like create. Okay, that is of type student, and it will return the updated student data. Okay, now I can write return this dot http client dot put. So put for http put request for update. Okay, student. Okay, here we have to do one more thing. If you go to the JSON server, here you can see for put we have to pass the ID value. Okay. So what I will do, I will copy this URL here, and as a second parameter, my payload will be sent. Okay. And here inside of the payload, I will have a ID value. Okay. So that is my put request. Now go to our edit component. For now, I can copy lot of code from my add component. Okay, first let's go to add component.html. Okay, copy this entire form. Okay, so and go to edit component.html, paste it over here. And the changes are here like you can change the heading, update student details. Okay, and here there is a method create, right? So for now, let's remove this click event. Okay, and here it is expecting the student form. Okay, so go to add component.ts file and copy this entire student form and go to edit component.ts file and add it here. Okay, now edit component, import the namespace. Now edit component.html, errors are gone. And here change the button name like update. Form must be populated with the edit record, right? So for that we have to invoke the get by ID API call. So for that what I can do, go to edit component.ts file. So how we can get the ID? It is available in the URL. So first we have to read the ID value from the URL. Okay. For that let me inject a service like private route activated route. Okay. That loads from the Angular router library. Okay. So using this activated route in the ng on it, I am trying to read the data. Okay, this dot route dot param map. Okay, dot subscribe. This is going to give all the dynamic placeholder values from the URL. Okay, so input like params. Now here what I will do, where ID equal to, okay, I am trying to read the ID value. Okay, so number. By default, the value in the URL will be the string. So I am reading as a number. So params dot get, and here we have to specify the dynamic placeholder name. So what is my dynamic placeholder name? Go to app routing module ID. So copy this placeholder name and get back to edit component and add it here. Okay, now I got the ID value. Now let me create a method here like get by ID. Okay, it inputs ID, and let's inject our student service to invoke the API call. Okay. Okay. Now this dot student service dot, sorry, student service dot get by ID and pass the ID value and subscribe to the response. Okay. And that response I can directly assign to my form. This dot form, student form equal to data. Okay. Now I have to invoke this get by ID here. Okay. Get by ID equal to ID. Okay. Now let's check whether we are able to populate our edit form or not. Okay. So to edit any record, I have to add a edit button, right? So here in the table, I'm going to add a new column where I can add the edit icon. Okay. So for that, let's go to all components.ts file first. First, I want to add a new column, right? So register the column name here like actions. Okay. Now go to all components.html file. Okay. Now let's duplicate one of the column container. Okay. And I will name it like action. Okay, here inside of the TD, we want to render the uh, I want to render a anchor link with material icon UI. Okay, on clicking that link, we have to navigate to our edit form. Okay, so for that first let's add the anchor tag. Okay, and here I can specify the dynamic route value for that. Since I am using dynamic route, right? Dynamically generated URL, right? So use brackets here. If you recall, here on the top, we are directly added. If it is a normal string, you no need to specify the square brackets. If it is a dynamic string for the attribute, then we have to define the in the square bracket. So router link, okay. And here I can specify like a array. And first initially the actual path, that is edit-student, okay. And remaining dynamic values I can pass as a second parameter. Okay, here we can access the ID from the element, right? So element dot ID. So on rendering, it will be rendered as slash edit hyphen student slash ID value. Okay. Now here I want to display the icon. So for that, go to material website and check for the icon. So here is the icon. So first let's import the module in the app module. Okay. So copy the module, app module and mat icon module. Okay. Now go to our all components.html file. Okay, now here let's add the material icon. So if you see here, here is one home button is there, right? So copy the mat icon. Okay, and I want edit, right? So instead of home, I can change it like edit. Okay, if I check, I should see the edit button. Okay, see, we are getting the edit button, right? Now, if I click on the one of the button, I should navigate to my edit form. So let's try. See, the ID value is coming in the URL. And if I check the network calls, okay, let's go back to home page again. Okay, and now click on edit button and check the network calls. See, get by ID, API call invoking, and the data is populating. Okay, now our form is a little bit not good, right? So go to add component.css file, copy these classes styles and go to edit component.css file, add it over here. Okay, and if we check, now our form is little better. Now we have to work on this update button. Okay, so for that, what I can do, I have to create a class method in my edit component.ts file. Okay, I will create like update. Okay, update, and I must call my this student service dot update method. To that update method, I can pass my form data. Okay, I'm successful. I want to redirect back to our home page. For that, we have to inject the router service. Okay, so private router. So router that loads from the Angular router. Okay, now I can use that this dot router dot navigate. Okay, and open square brackets and specify the path. And now register this update method with our button click, update button click. So go to edit component.html file and register the click event. Okay, let's test it. Okay, let's click on the edit button and now let me change the age to 15. Okay, now click on the update. See, now age got updated, and you can see here our update API call. See, put request and the payload. That means we are successfully updated the record. Next, we are going to focus on the delete operation. So now our main aim is to implement the delete operation. Okay, so let's go to our application, and first let's implement the API call logic. For that, go to our student service. Okay, here let's create a method for delete. Okay, delete method, and it should contains ID as a input parameter. Okay, now return this dot http client dot delete. Since we have to invoke the http delete endpoint, right, we have to use the delete method. Okay, now my how to frame URL means you can check our JSON server documentation. Okay, for http delete, just simply pass the slash at the end of the route. Okay, so that means I can use this same URL. Okay, so copy this, add it here. Okay, that's it. That much simple. Our API call logic. For this demo, I want to use Angular material dialog component to display as a confirmation, delete confirmation box. Okay. So for that, let's go to Angular material website and look for the dialog component section. Okay. And click on it. Okay. Here is small sample examples you can see. If I click on it, see like these examples, and more number of examples you can check for here. Okay. Like this, I want to display a delete confirmation model in our sample application. Okay, so to add this content, we have to maintain a separate component. So let me create a new component. So we know Angular CLI command for creating the component ng generate component and name of the component. I will name it like delete dialog student. Okay, I don't want any test file, so I'm going to skip it. Sorry, I have given component spelling wrong. Okay, let's create. Okay, now here you can see the component is generated. Now in this component, I am going to integrate my material dialog. Okay, so if I go to the new component, okay, so let's go to the website. First, let me get the sample HTML. Okay, for that, click on view code. Okay, here you can see a tab like dialog animation example dialog. Okay, so what you can do, you can copy this content and add it in our dialog component HTML file. Okay, since we are going to using material dialog component, right, we have to import the main module. Okay, so you can go to API, so copy this. Okay, go to our app module, let's import it. Okay, and import the mat dialog. Okay, sorry, I added my HTML content in CSS file content. So let's go to HTML file and add it here. Okay. Now, if you observe this, so delete item. This is my heading. So mat dialog title. Okay, this attribute represent. This is the heading. Okay, and here would you like to delete the item? Okay. So mat dialog content for displaying the main content, and here there is a mat dialog action method that contains buttons. Okay, so if you observe here mat dialog close attribute, so what this will do means it will helps to close the uh, on click of the button, this attribute. Okay, by default we can click without any click event also. We can close the model dialog. Okay, now, so that's about the HTML, and in TS file also we have to do some code changes. Okay, if you go to TS file, And if you scroll down here, you can see mat dialog example. So this is the main TS file in this sample model TS file. So here we have to register a mat dialog ref. Okay. So let's do that in our component as well. Okay. So go to delete dialog TS file. Okay. Let's inject that file. Okay. And let's import the mat dialog ref that loads from the Angular material. Okay. So let's remove it. And here we have to simply pass our component name itself. Okay. Now what this diagram means, it will give control over the dialog within the dialog component. Okay. So by using this programmatically, I can close or open the dialog within the dialog component. Okay. That for that purpose, it will be useful. Okay. Now, now I am ready with the sample dialog. Now let me add a delete icon button on my all students component. So all student component dot html. Let me create a icon. Okay, let me copy this icon. Okay, here I don't want any anchor tag because I don't want to navigate to any other page. I just want to open the model. So I will change this font icon to delete so that delete button will come. Okay, and Arial, let's check. Now let me register a click here. Okay, so we know for click, I can use circular basis and we have to pass the method. So first let's create a method in the all component.ts file to open the all student.ts file to open the model. Okay. So let me create like open delete model. Okay. So how we can open means let's go to the material website and here you can see this is the main parent component. And here bottom is the dialog pop-up component. Now let's check the code in the parent component. So here to open a dialog, they are using some dialog. Okay, dialog dot open. So where is the dialog? That dialog coming from the mat dialog. So let's copy this service. Okay, and let's inject the same service into our all component, all student component. Okay, so and we have to import this namespace. So let's import it. Now we have imported it. Now what I can do, this dot, sorry, this dot dialog dot open, dialog dot open. Okay. So let's check in the website, dialog dot open. And here first parameter is the component name. Which component? Dialog component name. Okay. So in our case, that name will be our delete dialog student component. Okay. And second, we have some configurations like width and any animation like that. Okay. For now, let me pass the width. Okay. Now, if I register this method here, I should see dialog must be appear on clicking the delete button. Okay, let's test it. Here I am getting the dialog button, right? Now, if I click on it, see, I am getting the dialog component. Okay, now if I click on no button, it is closing. If I click on OK button, it is automatically closing. Why it is closing automatically without click event means I have already mentioned there is an attribute. So if I go to HTML, mat dialog close, right? So that attribute is helping to close it. Okay. Now the thing is, uh, we have to invoke our delete API call in our dialog.ts file because on clicking the OK button, I have to invoke the API call for delete, right? So let's inject the service here. Okay, in the constructor, student service, student service. Okay, Now in the delete dialog, instead of automatically closing, let me remove the mad dialog close attribute from here for OK button. But I will register a manual click event. Okay. So for that click event, we have to create a method like confirm delete. Okay. In this method, I can invoke the API call. This dot student service dot delete, but delete method should contain some data, right? So this is normal code, but delete method should pass ID, right? Which is record to delete. That means from our parent class, we have to pass the ID value, right? So first let's register this click event with the confirm delete. Okay, now I have to somehow pass the data to the my delete dialog student component. So go to material website. Okay, and here we can see there is no configuration like sending some data to the dialog component, right? So let's check other examples. And if I check it here, this last one, and if I go to TS file, here you can see this is actual parent component and this is actual dialog component. So in the parent component, some data is passing. So that means one of the attribute with the data property we have to pass. Okay. That means if I go to my all student component.ts file, here I can pass a data object. That means for this method, we should have a input parameter like ID. So number. Now let's go to all component.html file, and to this click event, we have to pass the ID, right? So what I can do, element.id, I can pass. So now I am getting the ID value, so I can directly pass it. So this data must be read here. So to read the data in the component, so component what have to do? Component must inject this token, mad dialog data token, and so that the data property can be read. So copy this code. Here dialog data is a normal class. For my demo, I didn't create any class. Here you can see normal class. Payload class type we are defining. Okay. So let's go to here, our dialog component, and add it here. Here there is no type. So I will simply type any, and let's import the mad dialog data token. Okay. And also import the inject that loads from the Angular. So now I can access the ID value from this property. So data dot ID. Sorry, this dot data dot ID. So that means we are successfully passing our item ID to delete. Now on successful delete, we have to close our pop-up, right? For that, I can use now this dialog reference. I have mentioned mad dialog ref give control over the dialog component, right? So this dot dialog ref dot close. Okay, that will close us the pop-up. But what I will do, I will pass this ID on closing the ID on successful close. Okay. So now I can read this ID back into my parent component. How to read means, so go to all component.html, sorry, not HTML, TS file. And here just assign this dialog open to one variable. Okay. Dialog instance. Okay. Now I can use this dialog instance variable dot after closed dot subscribe. That means after closing the pop-up, this uh, executes, this subscribe gets executes. Okay, here it will receive the result if the pop-up is sending anything. Okay, that means here if we user clicks on the confirm, then API call invokes, then delete item will be deleted on success. We invoking close and we passing the ID, right? This value will be read into this TS file. For suppose if the user clicks a normal close button we have, right? So where is the delete normal close button? Here there is no data sending on closing. At the time, the result will be empty. Okay. So for that, we have to check the result value in all component.ts file. Okay. So if result exists, then we have to write small logic, that is our table content is in the all students rows, right? So we have to remove the deleted item from the table also. For that, what I can do, this dot all student table resource equal to this dot all student table resource dot filter dot id not equal to id. Okay, that's it. So here we are removing the deleted item from UI also. Okay, this is how delete component must be used. Okay, so let me test it. Refresh the page. Okay, open developer tool and go to network call to check the delete API call. Now open the delete button. Okay, I am deleting the second record. Okay, if I click on OK button, see record is deleted, and here you can see the API call. Okay, and request method is delete and it is successful. If I reload page, I don't see the deleted item because that is successfully deleted the server also. Okay, so that's all about the delete operation. So we are totally done with Angular 14 CRUD sample application using Angular Material UI. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope this video delivered some useful content to you all. If you like the video, please do support me by subscribing to my channel as well as by liking the video. Soon we are going to meet with new content. Until then, signing off.